You've been performing your entire life, not on a stage, not for applause, but in every conversation, every interaction, every moment someone is watching. You perform competence when you're confused. You perform happiness when you're hollow. You perform confidence when you're terrified. And the exhausting part, you've gotten so good at it that you've forgotten there's anyone underneath the performance. But here's what nobody tells you about the performance. The moment you stop, everything changes. Not in the way you fear, not with rejection, isolation, or collapse, but in a way that's so unexpected, so quietly revolutionary, that most people never risk finding out. And what we discovered might free you from a prison you didn't even know you were in. Let's be honest about something first. You didn't choose to perform. You learned to perform because it was necessary. When you were young, you discovered that certain versions of yourself were acceptable and others weren't. Certain emotions were allowed, others had to be hidden. So you learned, you adapted, you became fluent in the language of what others wanted to see. And there's nothing wrong with you for doing this. This is what sensitive, intelligent people do. They read the room, they adjust, they survive. But somewhere along the way, the performance became permanent. The mask became your face. And now you can't remember what you actually feel versus what you're supposed to feel. You can't tell the difference between what you want and what would make you look good for wanting. You've become a masterpiece of social engineering, perfect on the outside, hollow on the inside. And you're so tired. Let's talk about a Chinese concept, Sujiang. It means that which is so of itself, self-so, natural, unforced. Think of a tree. A tree doesn't perform being a tree. It doesn't try to impress other trees. It doesn't shape its branches to meet expectations. It simply grows according to its own nature, effortlessly, without apology. Now think of a bonsai tree, carefully pruned, wired into a specific shape, trained to be beautiful by someone else's standard. It's still alive. It might even be admired. But it's no longer growing according to its own nature. You are not a bonsai. You were never meant to be carefully pruned into someone else's vision of acceptability. So what happens when you stop performing? When you cut the wires? When you let yourself grow according to your own nature? Let me show you what nobody warns you about. The first thing that happens when you stop performing is profound discomfort. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something unfamiliar. For years, you've navigated social situations with a script. You knew what to say, how to act, which version of yourself to present. And now, without the script, you feel naked, exposed, like you're standing in a spotlight with no idea what your lines are. You'll second-guess yourself constantly. Was that too honest? Did I overshare? Should I have just smiled and said I'm fine? This discomfort makes most people run back to the performance, because the performance, even though it's exhausting, is at least familiar. This discomfort is not a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're growing. Like a snake shedding its skin, there's a moment of vulnerability before the new skin hardens. Stay in the discomfort. Don't run back to the costume. The second thing that happens is that people around you start acting strange, because you change the rules of the game without telling them. They were used to the performed version of you, the one who always said yes, the one who never rocked the boat, the one who played the role they expected. And now you're saying no. You're expressing actual opinions. You're not laughing at jokes that aren't funny. You're not pretending to be okay when you're not. And they don't know what to do with this. Some will ask, "Are you okay? You're acting different." What they mean is you're not performing anymore, and it's making me uncomfortable. Some will get angry because your authenticity exposes their performance. You're holding up a mirror they didn't ask to look into. And some, the rare ones, will feel relieved because your permission to be real gives them permission too. But here's the critical thing. Their confusion is not your responsibility to fix. You are not obligated to perform comfort for people who are uncomfortable with your authenticity. This is hard, because if you're a performer, you're probably also a people pleaser. And people pleasing is just another form of performance. Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. You are not a fixed thing that can be defined by others' expectations. You are a living process, constantly changing, endlessly becoming. And when you stop performing, you give yourself permission to be that process. The third thing that happens is painful but necessary. Some people will leave, not because you did anything wrong, but because the relationship was based on the performance, not the person. They didn't fall in love with you. They fell in love with the version of you that made them comfortable. And when that version disappears, there's nothing left to hold the relationship together. This will hurt, especially if these are people you've known for years, family, old friends, partners even. You'll be tempted to go back to performing just to keep them. And maybe sometimes you will. That's okay. This isn't about perfection. But notice what happens when you perform to keep someone. Notice the resentment that builds. Notice how you feel smaller, quieter, less alive. That's the cost of the performance. And eventually, you have to decide, is this relationship worth the cost of losing myself? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it's no. Both answers are okay. But here's what Watts understood. The people who leave when you stop performing were never really with you to begin with. They were with the performance, the act, the illusion. And as much as it hurts, their leaving creates space. Space for people who can love the real you. Space for relationships based on truth, not transaction. And now we arrive at the unexpected part, the part that makes all the discomfort worth it. When you stop performing, slowly, gradually, you start to remember who you actually are. Not who you should be, not who would be most acceptable, but who you are beneath all the layers of adaptation. You start to notice what you actually enjoy, not what you're supposed to enjoy. You start to feel what you actually feel, not what would be easiest to feel. You start to want what you actually want, not what would make you look good for wanting. And this is strange, because you realize you don't fully know this person yet. You've been strangers for so long. There are preferences you didn't know you had, boundaries you didn't know you needed, dreams you didn't know you were allowed to have. It's like meeting yourself for the first time in years. I remember a woman who spent her whole life performing cheerfulness. She was the one everyone called when they needed cheering up, the positive one, the light. And one day she stopped. She let herself be quiet, serious, even sad when she was sad. And she told me, I discovered I actually love silence. I thought I was a social person because I was always around people. But I was just performing social. Underneath, I'm contemplative. I need solitude. She had spent 40 years performing extroversion because that's what was rewarded. And when she stopped, she found her actual nature, quiet, deep, reflective. This is what happens when you stop performing. You stop being what's expected, and you start being what's true. The fifth thing that happens is the most paradoxical. When you stop trying to be someone, you become more fully yourself than ever before. And that selfhood is effortless. This is Wu Wei, the Taoist principle of effortless action. Performing takes enormous energy. You have to remember who you're supposed to be in every situation. You have to monitor yourself constantly. You have to edit in real time. It's exhausting. But when you stop performing, when you let yourself simply be, there's nothing to maintain, nothing to remember, nothing to edit. You just respond naturally. You speak from your actual thoughts. You act from your actual values. And paradoxically, this makes you more magnetic, because people can feel the difference between performance and presence. Performance is polished but hollow. Presence is imperfect but real. And real is rare. Real cuts through the noise. Real creates connection. When you stop performing, you stop trying to be interesting, likable, impressive, and in that stopping, you become all those things naturally. Not because you're trying, but because authenticity is inherently compelling. So how do you actually do this? How do you stop a performance that's been running for decades? You start small. You don't burn down your whole life overnight. First practice. Notice when you're performing. In a conversation, pause and ask yourself, am I saying what I actually think or what I think I should say? Am I laughing because it's funny or because I'm supposed to? Am I agreeing to this because I want to or because saying no feels too risky? Just notice. Don't judge it. Don't try to change it yet. Just become aware. Second practice, start with low-stakes authenticity. Don't start by confessing your deepest truth to your most judgmental family member. Start by ordering what you actually want at a restaurant instead of what sounds sophisticated. Start by saying, I'm not sure, instead of pretending to have an opinion. Start by letting a silence sit instead of filling it with performance. Third practice, sit with the discomfort of being seen. When you express something real and someone looks at you strangely, don't immediately backtrack, don't laugh it off. Don't perform your way out of the vulnerability. Just breathe. Let yourself be seen. Let the discomfort exist. It won't kill you, I promise. And finally, find one person you can be completely unperformed with. A friend, a therapist, a journal, even just yourself in the mirror. Practice saying the truth out loud. Practice not editing. Practice being messy, uncertain, imperfect. The more you practice authenticity in safe spaces, the easier it becomes in harder ones. Here's what I wish someone had told me years ago. On the other side of performance is not chaos. It's not rejection. It's not isolation. On the other side of performance is rest. The deep, bone-level rest of not having to be anyone other than who you are. The rest of conversations where you don't have to calculate every word. The rest of relationships where you don't have to earn your place. The rest of a life where you're no longer the director, the actor, and the audience all at once. you'll discover that the real you is not as unacceptable as you feared. You're not too much or too little. You're not broken or wrong. You're just you, specific, particular, imperfect, real. And the people who can't handle that, they were never your people anyway. The ones who stay, the ones who lean in closer when you stop performing, those are your people. They don't want the show. They want the truth. They want you, unfiltered and uncalculated. And those relationships, built on reality instead of performance, are the only ones worth having. So here's the invitation. Uncomfortable as it is, stop performing. Not all at once, not perfectly, but little by little, moment by moment, let the real you be seen. Let yourself be awkward. Let yourself not know. Let yourself take up the space you actually need, not the space that's been assigned to you. Let yourself disappoint people whose expectations were never yours to carry. Let yourself be smaller than the performance, or bigger, or just completely different. The menu is not the meal. The performance is not you. It's a description of you. A sanitized, acceptable, carefully curated description. But you are the actual experience, messy, alive, unscripted. And when you stop performing, you stop living in the menu. You start living in the meal. You taste your actual life. You feel your actual feelings. You live your actual days. And yes, it's scarier. Yes, it's more vulnerable. Yes, it's uncertain. But it's also the only way to be free. Free from the exhaustion of constant calculation. Free from the hollowness of applause for a role you're playing. Free to finally just be. What happens when you stop performing for others? You lose the people who were only there for the show. You gain the people who want the truth. You lose the comfort of knowing exactly who you're supposed to be. You gain the adventure of discovering who you actually are. You lose the approval of people who need you small. You gain the respect of people who can handle you real. The performance was never you. It was just the costume you wore to survive. But you don't have to survive anymore. You can live, and living unperformed and unpolished is what you came here for. Welcome home.